Welcome in, NFL Insiders. We are officially on the air. I'm Lisa Kearney, rolling with the heavy hitters today. Ed Werder, Jarrett Bell, Hall of Famer Bill Polian here with me. The Steelers making their offseason priorities very clear, guys. We will get to the latest on their contract talks with Antonio Brown, but we do begin with the biggest news coming out of Pittsburgh today. Jets cornerback Darrelle Revis charged with 4 felonies following an altercation early Sunday morning. The incident occurring at 2:43 a.m. on Pittsburgh's South Side, where 2 men in their early 20s told police they were punched amid a verbal altercation, leaving them unconscious for 10 minutes. The 4-time All-Pro has been charged with 2 felony counts of aggravated assault, 1 felony count each of robbery and conspiracy, and a misdemeanor count of terroristic threats. Our Coley Harvey joins us from Pittsburgh, where the alleged altercation took place. Coley, when do authorities expect Revis to turn himself in?
Well, Lisa, I've been told soon, and soon could mean in the next few minutes, could mean in the next couple of hours, could mean at some point tomorrow. Basically, this morning when I got a chance to speak with Darrell's attorney, Blaine Jones, he told me, he said, look, it's probably going to be at some point in the next 24 to 48 hours where we'll actually see Darrelle Revis go into a police precinct. And where we're standing right here behind me, I will say, this is Pittsburgh Police Headquarters. He could walk in the doors right here behind me at this particular precinct. He could go to another one around town. That is totally up to what the agreement is between the police and also Revis's attorney. Right now, we don't have any idea exactly where that is. We think it may be here, and so this is why we've been standing here all morning. This being said, I talked with Blaine Jones early this morning at 5 a.m., and he said this about Revis. He said, it's kind of unfathomable in his eyes that this took place the way that it's been described so far, and part of that is because he doesn't feel as if his client has had a good chance to explain to the police his role in this altercation. And then also he feels like, hey, Darrelle Revis has been in the national spotlight since he was 13 years old, hasn't been in any kind of trouble, and here he is at 31. Why would he be acting out this way? That's just the message from Blaine Jones, his attorney, at this point. We'll find out the answer to that question hopefully later today, and as this continues to progress on.
Coley Harvey with the very latest. We will keep in touch as this information continues to come out there in Pittsburgh. You heard him say it, expected to turn himself in sometime very soon. The Jets have said they are aware of the incident. They have spoken to Revis, and guys, this is very uncharacteristic of a guy who's been in the league for a decade now. Jarrett, I'm coming to you. What more can you tell us at this point?
Well, I think just to underscore that point, Darrelle Revis is not a player throughout his career who has had off-the-field incidents. In fact, he's a very low-key, mellow type of guy, has been for much of his career, and a type of guy who has really been meticulous, which we've seen play out in his contract situations, but a very thoughtful type of guy in terms of how he handles his business. So it's out of character from that standpoint. One of the things that Coley talked about in one of his earlier reports was about what was seen on the cell phone video that was recovered from police. And apparently there's Darrelle Revis being shown on the video asking one of the guys holding the video, why are you following me? So that may be something that we'll find more details about in terms of whether or not Darrelle Revis really has a strong case for self-defense. But we do know that 2 men were found by police to be allegedly unconscious, and Revis is the person that has been charged here, and we'll see how those charges stick. But you hear felony charges and you go, whoa, it sounds maybe to be a real serious situation.
Mm-hmm. It's been an unusual 11 months for this particular player, Darrelle Revis, because he's one of the richest players in recent NFL history, among non-quarterbacks certainly, and yet he fired and then sued the agents responsible for negotiating the contracts on his behalf last May. Then he played poorly throughout the season, seemed to be making excuses publicly for it, made some questionable remarks publicly, and now you have this incident, which I think not only puts his Jets career in jeopardy, but maybe his whole NFL career in jeopardy, depending on how this is ultimately adjudicated. I just talked to a source who said that, his $6 million guaranteed money is certainly in jeopardy because of this incident. And this particular person expects that the Jets and or the league office will provoke some sort of action to try to claim this is conduct detrimental, a violation of the personal conduct policy, and allow the Jets potentially to recover that $6 million and avoid ultimately paying, as is called for in his contract, $2 million in roster bonus money due the second day of the league year. So that would be March 11th. They would probably let him go.
Bill, we talked about it, and it came out when Jarrett was talking about it. He's reportedly saying that, hey, whoa, I was the victim here. We live in a different day and age of when he came into the league a decade ago in terms of social media and pictures and all things being posted. What's the expectation from a team's front office for guys in code of conduct in these types of situations?
Well, Jim Caldwell and I told it to our team our last 2 years in Indianapolis when social media began to explode. Number one, you have no expectation of privacy when you sign the contract. Number two, according to the Supreme Court, Sullivan versus the New York Times, you're a public figure by definition. Nobody can defame you. You don't have any rights along those lines, at least not in the normal course of events. And then finally, you're governed by the NFL personal conduct policy, which is very explicit about what you can do. And interestingly enough, to Ed's point, a plea bargain under the NFL personal conduct policy is the same as a guilty verdict. So if you plea bargain from a felony, let's say, down to a misdemeanor that would involve a crime of violence or something of that nature, that's the same as a guilty verdict. So you're in a situation where, as the player, you have liability under the personal conduct policy. If there is forfeiture language in the contract, as there are in many of these, then you would run the risk of forfeiting a lot of guaranteed money. That's something that we'll see develop down the road. But it makes it much harder for a player and his lawyer in these kinds of situations because you almost have to try and get yourself acquitted rather than plea bargain, which with the lawyer would be the first thing the lawyer would say to you is go ahead and plea bargain, take all the jail liability and personal liability away and plea bargain it. But if you do, you stand the risk of losing a good bit of money.
One other thing, though, I think, Bill, when you think about moving forward in terms of these being initial charges and after he turns himself in, a DA takes a look at the case, what happens then? Do those charges get reduced in any manner? And maybe that's something else that will be a factor here moving forward. So I think
typically they do get reduced unless there's severe bodily injury to the individuals involved. So you could find a reduction in charges, and he's got a clean record up to now under the personal conduct policy. But the big question is, what does the contract say, relative to the personal conduct policy? If it's a blanket, any violation triggers a forfeiture, you got a problem.
And let's be fair here. We haven't heard Darrelle Revis's version of events, and those that we have heard couldn't be more conflicting, with both sides claiming they were the victim and suffered bodily injury in the process.
So we're talking what he said. He said,
but also the Jets.
We do have victims, though.
Yeah, we have victims, and we have statements from witnesses who are allegedly tied to the victims, too. So.
And Revis also treated for medical wounds of some sorts, which that was unclear at this point. But here it is. He's 31. The Jets, as a team, have been incredibly non-committal in terms of his future with their franchise. You threw out a ton of numbers. So here, prior to this incident even last weekend, his future relatively uncertain with this franchise. And here he is, 31 again. What does the rest of his future really look like? So, Bill, what does the team do here?
Well, the team's situation is largely dictated by the personal conduct policy and what they believe to be their rights under the contract. We don't have the contract, so we can't make that judgment. But I guarantee you this morning they made that judgment. They sat down with their lawyer and with their cap guy, and they determined what they think their liability and their rights are. And so I would say that in terms of going forward with the triggering of March 11th and the roster bonus, it's not very likely that Darrelle will be with the team. They probably will extricate themselves from that situation and then worry about what other liability there is going forward.
With the decline in performance last year, it was likely he was going to be released anyway. This only makes that more likely.
Right.
NFL spokesman Brian McCarthy saying the league would also look into the matter. Of course, much more to come on that. Freak show right here. AB posting a pic of himself and agent Drew Rosenhaus this week, and you know what that means. I want to get paid. The Steelers have begun negotiating a contract with Brown that would keep him in Pittsburgh for the rest of his career. And
or twerking to come.
That's right. And when your GM is saying, we want Antonio to retire a Steeler for life, man, things are in your favor. So thank you, Kevin Colbert. Bill, what could this deal look like for the 5-time Pro Bowler?
Well, Drew Rosenhaus is going to say he's a top 10 receiver, and the number there is $15.8 million. Kevin's going to gag when he hears that, and they're going to try and bring it in at something lower than that, and look for some clauses in the contract that are going to limit the twerking and the violation of league rules, or at least put a fairly large crimp in his pocket if he gets in one of those situations again. But this is a guy who's truly a number one receiver, truly a top 10 receiver, a guy who really makes their offense go. When he's out of the lineup, they are not the same team. And Kevin made it pretty clear that they want to get a deal done. And Drew is a deal maker for all his sound and fury. Mm-hmm. He is a deal maker. And I expect this will get done.
And, it seems like this negotiation has actually been going on really for 2-3 years. When you think about Antonio Brown and the restructures that he's had, moving money from next year to last year and things like that he's done with this contract. And remember, the Steelers' policy has been we don't negotiate with players until they go into that last year of his contract. Well, 2017, the last year of the contract, and of course we're seeing this. But I took a look at the highest paid receivers, and for average salary, you go to Julio Jones at $14 million, AJ Green at $15 million a year. So if you're Antonio Brown, that's about where you're going to be wanting to.
And enormous guarantees. I think the most interesting part of the whole deal, and Kevin Colbert said the same thing about making Le'Veon Bell a Steeler for life, is that Antonio Brown is the first priority, even though he has a year left on his contract. Le'Veon Bell's going out of contract. It seems to me they're trying to ensure that they have Brown done so that if they franchise tag Bell, they can do it again the next year without risking an either-or decision. Ultimately.
Yeah, and even if they can't get a deal done with AB, he's got a year to go. It'd be a little bit messy in terms of the public part of it, but they can still tag the Le'Veon, and they got their two guys set for the future, hopefully.
Do you think there's a message in all of this to Le'Veon Bell? He's obviously missed games with suspensions. And
I think so. If you want to get paid, you got to be a 16-game player or close to it. And you can't get yourself in trouble, and there's a message there. Yeah.
Well, the Steelers have until March 1st to assign any franchise tag, and they have more than $35 million in cap space. Colbert saying, I kind of like that flexibility. I'll see what I do with all of that money. Hey, to the Cowboys we go. Jalen Smith, Cowboys, Ed's favorite subject. Jalen Smith posting this video to Twitter this week. Look at him go. Smith recovering from reconstructive ACL surgery, showing off what really seems to be notable progress from the injury suffered in the last game of his college career with Notre Dame. The linebacker drafted in the second round by the Cowboys, but missed the entire 2016 season. And the reel is back. He said it, not me. That's how he posted it. So, Ed, it's been about a year since the injury occurred. He's still wearing that big, bulky brace.
Yeah, it's hard to see, but you do notice that what's known as an AFO brace on his left foot and ankle, and that's because he is, according to sources, still suffering the same drop foot issue that he's had since he damaged nerves and had that horrific knee injury that led the Cowboys him to be available in the second round. He's like a top 5 pick under ordinary circumstances. The Cowboys think that in the off-season program he's going to be fully involved, but he's going to have to wear the brace. And the question then becomes, what will the situation be in 6 months? Will there be enough improvement that he isn't suffering drop foot, and when he plays a game, he can do it without the brace? Because I think most people believe it's going to be very difficult for him to play linebacker with that brace on. Now, that being said, before the Cowboys played against the Lions, a Monday night game right after Christmas, I was standing on the field with Stephen Jones as they went through pregame warmups. And I was talking to him about what a great rookie seasons Des Bryant or Ezekiel Elliott and Dak Prescott had. And he was watching Jalen Smith run sprints, and he said, that guy there might be better than either one of the other two, which is a remarkable statement.
Bill's just smiles. Bill's all smiles over there.
I love those game changers. I don't know about better, but he was the Zeke Elliott on defense. in last year's draft. Absolutely a top 5. They were 1 and 1A in my mind as the 2 best players in the draft. Explosive, athletic, tough, hard-nosed, everything you want in a linebacker. Could use him in any number of different situations. Middle, will in that defense, in the Cowboys defense, where you make all the plays. I mean, he would be close to a Hall of Fame talent with what he was before the injury. So we'll see. It's a nerve injury. They do regenerate, but you never know when.
Yeah, and that one of the things that Jalen Smith indicated to reporters recently was that he felt encouraged that the regeneration process was moving along, and that's the big thing. Like you said, it's a nerve situation in terms of whether or not that's going to hold up long term. The signs seem to be where they had hoped for them to be. In fact, Smith even said that he thought that he may have been able to play late in the season if that was, a possibility for him. I talked to Jerry Jones, who said something similar to what Stephen Jones said. In fact, he may have went one step further and says, hey, the best rookie in our class hasn't even played yet, talking about Jalen Smith. So the hyperbole is on.
The Jones boys, they can do
it. It's not hyperbole when you're talking about this guy. Not if he's back to what he was at Notre Dame.
Worth the risk, then, you said.
And you even said, Bill, heck, if he's 85%,
if he's 85%, he's still a Pro Bowl caliber guy. Absolutely.
There is more to me, Queen Eliara of Elfgard, than my elven magic. Just as there's more to Geico than saving you money, Geico also gives you 24/7 access to licensed agents online, on the phone, or on the Geico app. And while I am a mighty elf queen, I am also a mighty big fan of barbecue potato chips. Minions! More smoky mesquite.
Geico. Expect great savings and a whole lot more.
Hey, this guy, Project Jared Goff, full speed ahead, right? The Rams' second-year QB, been working out with quarterbacks coach Tom House, Adam Dato. This offseason, Goff replaced Case Keenum in his rookie campaign last season, struggled as the Rams ranked dead last in total offense. We know House and Dato have worked with notable quarterbacks, including Matt Ryan. So with Matt LaFleur now going, right? So it all makes sense. So it all makes sense. But Bill, we want to know, how much can these guys help Goff? Short-term, long-term.
A great deal in both cases, short-term and long-term. When you go through a nightmare rookie season like he did last year, your mechanics deteriorate badly. That's what happened to Bortles, and it probably happened to him to some degree. So this is good for him. He goes into a situation where Tom House, who's a former big league pitcher and pitching coach, works with him on an efficient delivery, works with him to try and get the torque back into his body, not so much arm. That's good for the long term. And Mr. Data works with him on just quarterbacking mechanics and quarterbacking psychology, et cetera. It'll be really, really good for him. He needs to get his feet on the ground.
Yeah, and then you've got Sean McVay taking over the offense, so he'll have the mental part of the game to work on, obviously, with the Rams. You talk about that difference from year one to year two. What do you expect, Bill, from
you expect a step forward. It's not going to be a big step because he's got a very steep learning curve. And he only played one season of college football, but it'll be a step forward.
It seems like these sessions are even more important now because the coaches themselves have so little time with the players in the offseason.
That's correct.
And, Bill, for everybody at home, this is a 4-year project. Like, give it some time.
That's exactly right. Take a deep breath. Give it some time. It takes 4 years. That was Peyton Manning, Tom Brady. Takes 4 years to make a quarterback.
And I was just handed this research. Thank you, Paul. Goff had the lowest yards per attempt of any quarterback in 2016.
Ouch.
Only 5.3. So only way to go is up.
Patient. Take your own advice.
You know me.
4 years.
Very patient. Thanks, guys. Awesome show.